Welcome to SIREAS' podcast in celebration of International Women's Day. My name is Ingrid Fenn, and I'm excited to bring together women who have pushed beyond the corporate real estate ceiling to share their experiences with you. Tiffany and Jess, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Jessica Pernicone. I'm the head of America Sales for JLL's Work Dynamics business.
Hi, I am Tiffany Mizen, and I am head of real estate and facilities at Bridgewater Associates.
So, this year's International Women's Day theme, Embrace Equity, is highlighting the difference between equality and equity. And when we think about equality, we think about giving opportunities to people equally. But equity really recognizes that people come from different places and experiences, and it seeks to provide resources and support to ensure individuals can reach the same outcomes. This is huge when we think about women in corporate real estate who are trying to grow and move towards better opportunities and positions of leadership. And most often, men and women do not move towards those goals starting from an equal place or with equal circumstances and support. And I thought we could start out the discussion today by talking about some examples of this.
I've researched this a little bit, and there was a study from KPMG that happened last year that tackles topics on women's leadership. And what it came down to is that women are willing to take on small risks, maybe a new project, pitching an idea, but they really are less inclined to engage in bigger risks, such as moving for a new job. And willingness to take risk in women declines as experience grows, where it gets higher for men, even though across the board, women acknowledge that if you do take career risks, you will progress faster up the ladder and personally. So I think it's interesting if we think about women are, instead of playing to win, they're playing not to lose, hesitating to take these perceived big risks. So how can we support our women's colleagues and enable their success and encourage more risk taking so that they can continue to progress in their careers and stay in the workforce longer?
I think that you are spot on. One example of where I see this hesitation to take on more risk is in the more highly compensated business development roles where compensation is directly tied to success, as you were mentioning. And, as an advisor, we participate in a lot of competitive bidding processes and see many presentations from the service providers across the industry. And, we know that historically and still today, and particularly in our industry, there is inequality of gender representation in the workforce, and that is significantly evident in the sales environment. As an industry, I think we are making attempts to overcome this disparity. However, we, in many cases, are still falling short, and I think there are so often times that the presence of women in the room doesn't have the impact that it could. And this is, because there has been significantly less opportunities for them to present and to sell. And, this is just one example, but I think that we can support our female colleagues to take on more risk by providing more awareness of the difference in opportunities that have been afforded to men and women, and to really be more intentional about the alignment of training and the tools to support success. And this is a real and tangible example of how to drive more equity in our industry.
I could not agree more. When I think about equity, I often have this picture in my head of a meme or a GIF that goes around on the internet of someone standing on equal boxes and not being able to see over the fence. And then for the person that's shorter, the equity is them standing on 5 more boxes so that they're at the same threshold and be able to see over the fence as the taller person. And when I apply that to our industry, I have always found that the package required to help you get to the next step is so very different for women than it is for men. We're not playing the same game with the same deck of cards.
To that point, we talk about examples of a lack of equity or equality, and that kind of leads into challenges for women as we're thinking about advancing our career in CRE. And there is still inequality of gender representation, particularly in leadership and executive roles. And it is also an industry that is heavily focused on relationships and People tend to promote their friends in many cases, and this is a challenge for women to overcome. Each of you are an example of women who have overcome that, and maybe we could talk a little bit about the career decisions that we've made that were perhaps a stretch or outside of our comfort zone, as you mentioned, Jess, and what are those kind of personal stories or examples that have really launched your career to the next level?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was in the same role for a really long time and I got really comfortable in it. And when an opportunity came where I was asked to raise my hand to take on this new role as head of sales, I definitely did not feel like I was ready for it. It was at the right time. I felt like I needed a couple more years. So I sought some guidance for some senior people in the firm and I received really great support. Then what surprised me was I went to one of the senior guys in the company and I said, I don't have the same background as the previous people in this job. I don't, and they've all been men before me. And he said, well, maybe it's time we had somebody who looked a little different. Maybe it's time we had somebody who thinks a little different. And maybe you don't have to be like them. Maybe you could just be like you and just try your best. And I think that's what we need. And it was kind of like a wake up call for me, like, oh, okay, if I can be myself and do this job, then I'm in. And it was great to hear that and get that support and advocacy. I've been thinking a lot about when women are in the room, there can often be a time where it's hard to get your voice heard, or there's a room that maybe doesn't acknowledge, someone's opinion. And in those situations, women may feel the need to, get a little bit more aggressive, be a little bit harsher in order to be taken seriously, to be heard, to establish the credibility. And that sometimes causes backlash and it creates that, someone who you're not are because we're not able to be vulnerable or, not being heard. Do you guys feel that? How do you balance that being heard without becoming, aggressive and trying to act, stereotypically male?
For me, that has come with maturity of
Mhm.
understanding what your place is and what your value is and what you can offer to a room. But certainly, if I think through the progression of my career, that level of comfort and that confidence in what my value was and what I had to bring to the table wasn't there. And therefore, finding your voice in a room, particularly a room full of men, you could be overlooked if you don't present that confidence. And so then the tendency can be to move a little bit towards frustration or aggression. And so I think for me, that has come as a part of the experience.
I agree. So much of it is maturity and increasing your comfort level in spaces to know that this is the value I add. And when I speak, it's for a reason. And I stand in that. But there's also, I've had the privilege of working with some amazing managers and leaders who gave me the opportunity to speak.
We talked about the choices that we've made that have taken us a little bit outside of our comfort zone, but about who has helped us advance. Jess, you started to touch upon this, who has really supported the advancement of our careers, and whether that's women or men, but reflecting upon that. And, for me, most certainly, my former business partner had a huge impact on my life. And she was a mentor for me for many years before we founded SIREAS together. And I learned a tremendous amount from her, and we created something really special together. At the time, I don't think I had any idea the challenges we would overcome or just how much work it would be, or how the industry would perceive us and what it would take to build the reputation that we have today. But I think that as women leaders, we had a different approach, and we have a different approach to leadership style, to how we solve problems, and how we develop strategies. And that has been one of the most powerful competitive advantages for us.
One person made a very big difference a few years ago. Jane Muir-Sands is the global head of real estate at IBM. I first met her a year ago and said I wanted to make a big move in my career. I wanted to be a leader of leaders. And what does that look like? And she point blank asked me, what motivates you? And I gave so many answers. And she said, no, not what motivates Tiffany, the real estate leader, not what motivates Tiffany, the head of real estate east at IBM. What motivates Tiffany Mizen? I am motivated to change the narrative and to represent Black women in corporate America. And that then influences every decision I make moving forward. And because I wasn't operating from that perspective before, I wasn't sure what the next step was. I couldn't really picture where I was headed and how I was contributing once I got to a certain level. And she opened a door, blew up glass ceiling, and allowed me to step into the next phase of my career. And I'm so grateful to her.
That is awesome. What a great sentiment, Tiffany. For me, my boss is Cynthia Cantor. She's a chief client value and growth officer for JLL's Work Dynamics business. And it's been really eye-opening for me to work with her and to see how she leads and to see how she lets me lead. And it's been exciting, frankly. She encourages me to lead my team in my own way. She jumps in to help when I ask. She lets me solve my own problems. And really, this creates an environment where I just feel completely supported, but I also feel empowered. So I appreciate that she's done that for me and continues to do that.
And so, these are great stories. And I think the industry is making improvements. And so what are the tangible things that we can do or that can happen across corporate real estate to really continue to move the needle to make the industry more equitable for women? And how can we support that?
The first thing that I've been leaning into is transparency around pay and opening up the conversation and mentorship in that regard. There is definitely an opportunity to take it to the next level for compensation for women. And I think we have created transparency around the narrative, what is, the understanding that there is a 10% salary gap between men and women.
Great point. And it's such a challenging thing. If I think many companies are working hard to move the needle. I think having DE&I as a key focus and as a measured indicator really accelerates the agenda. I think there's just an overall understanding that's a right thing to do. It builds better partnerships. It builds better business performance in general. I think we have to keep that topic of conversation and keep it relevant and keeping it meaningful, because when it becomes just a check the box, that's when we lose ground.
I think this is such a relevant point. And while it's critical that corporations are intentional about their DE&I programs and proactively closing these gaps, I also think that we can individually support each other and other women through mentorship and building relationships.
I love that. I think advocating for other women in your firm or in the industry in general, it's such a powerful thing to credit the successes of others and to build people up, encourage your female colleagues to take more risks, help them see their best attributes. I guess what I would say is, let's not just mentor women, let's advocate for them to help them see the potential that they may not have the confidence or they may not have the ability to really understand what they're capable of. So to kind of help build up everybody around us so we can all rise up together.
Something that I have held on to is that you are your strongest advocate. Early on in my career, I was looking to a mentor or to a sponsor to help guide me along, to help me make decisions. And my career changed when I started to trust myself and to advocate for myself, to not necessarily seek acceptance, but to lean into that.
When I was preparing my thought, I was like, oh, is this stuff too obvious? But the fact that we're still talking about it means it's not obvious enough. I think we still have to get the message across. It's worth it to take the time to reflect onto what we can do more, because then it becomes a conscious effort to raise awareness and to see people who aren't being seen, to listen to people who aren't being heard, because it's when people aren't heard, it's when people aren't seen, that's when they leave the workforce, it's when they leave the industry. And women, they leave faster than men because it's easier. So I think there's a risk if we don't continue this conversation.
I agree. And it's the communication, because I find that I remember feeling feeling like, has anyone else been through this? Who can I talk to? Is there acknowledgement of what I'm experiencing? And I think hearing the conversation at all levels and acknowledging that we have shared experiences is very powerful.
And I also think it's difficult for women to be able to acknowledge their successes and to own them. I think that that is a much easier thing for men to do. And I was actually having dinner last night with a woman who just got a massive promotion, and we were celebrating it, and she downplayed it being about her. And I kind of stopped her a minute and I was like, well, wait a minute. You just accomplished something really amazing. And in a sort of joking way, you downplayed yourself and your role in achieving that. And I think that's what we do a little bit. And it's something that's kind of just been ingrained in us for a long time. And I think that narrative needs to start to change if we start to be, really owning and taking and understanding the value that we bring to the table. If we aren't questioning it, then others aren't going to be questioning it. And then your presence is stronger.
I'm in this advocate program where the woman I'm advocating for, she goes, I'm so thrilled to see JLL put a woman in this role because it gives me the hope and the vision and the confidence that this firm will bring me up as far as I can go as well.
Yes.
Like the sky is the limit. And that changed the perspective for me. But it was like, at first I was like, oh, people think I only got the job because I'm female and that sucks. And then I'm like, okay, I need to shift how I think about this because it's going to only hurt my performance if I think I'm a token.
I will wrap up with, I love our industry. I love what we do. And I want to be an advocate for the next generation of female leaders, female real estate professionals. And these conversations are so very important in making sure that we continue the trajectory that we're on. So I thank SIREAS for having us and look forward to more of these.
I guess I would just close it out to say that women in corporate real estate, never been a better time to enter and advance in this industry. And I think that to my fellow females, it's our responsibility to show up, be vocal, support, and willing to work collaboratively to really drive positive changes because I think the industry is ready for it.
This has been such a powerful and inspirational conversation, and I'm so glad we did this. I want to just thank you both for sharing this time with me in support of International Women's Day. And I'll leave us with one final thought. I came across this quote that I thought was really profound. Equality is leaving the door open for everyone who has the means to approach it. Equity is ensuring that there is a pathway to that door for those who need it. So thanks for everyone listening in, and thanks again to both of you.